The New York Mets signed somebody. We'll talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Now, if you asked me back in September if Adam Ottavino is going to be a part of the Mets bullpen in 2024, I would have said, of course. He had his $6.75 million player option to return, and after a somewhat down season in 2023, I think everyone expected him to pick that bad boy up. Then the offseason happens. Ottavino meets with the Mets brass, decides he wants to be a free agent. Now, at the time, there were sort of conflicting reports about why he decided to be a free agent. Ottavino said it wasn't financial. It was an uncertainty about the Mets front office and their situation heading into this year. He was very familiar with Billy Epler and Buck Showalter. Those guys were cleared out for different reasons, but it was a new front office. It was going to be a new manager, and he decided to test free agency. There was also some reports at the time that indicated that he wanted his contract amended, part of it being around the deferrals in his contract. Now, here's the original deal he signed with the Mets. Well, actually, the second deal he signed after he signed as a free agent in 2022, or for the 2022 season, I should say. So he has a good year in 2022. Last offseason, he signs a 2-year, $14.5 million deal with the Mets. And that contract had $4 million deferred in each year. So he was set to make for the 2024 season that $6.75 million, but $4 million of that was deferred. So he only would have actually made $2.75 million during the 2023 season. Then he'd have $1 million coming his way every year from 2032 through 2035. And he was already getting $500K a year from 2025 through 2030 from the deferred money in the 2023 salary, with $1 million coming his way in 2031. Point being, he wants to get rid of those deferrals potentially, get more guaranteed money up front. Mets decided, no, you have that player option. If you want to exercise it, we'd love to have you back. Otherwise, enjoy free agency, see what's out there. And, we could always keep a dialogue throughout the offseason. And Adam Ottavino's working SNY. He's still in New York, a New York guy, lives in New York City. I think as the offseason waned on and there was not that much money out there and everything is dragged out, and who knows how much interest there was in Adam Ottavino and at what price point, the New York Mets started to look better and better. Stay in the same place that you spent the last 2 seasons. A team that, has a sneaky shot to be good this year, especially if you think highly of yourself as an 8th inning guy that can set up Edwin Diaz, which, remember, he did that in the 2022 season, and that's 101 games. So Adam Ottavino comes back. If you look at this from a Mets perspective, just strictly based on the fact that he was going to get $6.75 million. He was going to be on your books through 2035. And now he returns at $4.5 million, which is actually cheaper in some respects than his first year with the Mets back in 2022 when he signed a $4 million deal with $1 million in incentives that he hit. This will be the cheapest year for Adam Ottavino to pitch in a Mets uniform when you consider deferrals. So considering the fact that right now he is the most accomplished reliever in the Mets bullpen, not named Edwin Diaz, this is a great signing by the Mets. There's no reason to quibble about it at that price point. It's a really good deal. And I'll talk in the next segment about the concerning things from last season that have some Mets fans not as excited about this. But relievers are volatile. And so everything that I'll get into in the next segment could just be explained by, it was a bad year. In 2 years in a Mets uniform, he has pitched to a 2.62 ERA and 127 and a third innings pitch. Now, obviously, Edwin Diaz has a better ERA over that 2-year span, but he didn't pitch in the second year. Without even looking it up, I can tell you that Adam Ottavino has been the best reliever in the Mets bullpen for the last 2 years. because he has the best ERA combined and the most innings pitched. Now, he was lights out in 2022, as I said, 2.06 ERA. It was basically Diaz, Ottavino, and Seth Lugo. 2023 was supposed to be Diaz, David Robertson, Ottavino. We never saw that, and he struggled. Did not pitch well. He lost 7 games. That's a pretty glaring stat, even when record doesn't matter as much anymore. To lose 7 games as a reliever, that's saying something. But with all that said, even in a down year, he still pitched over 60 innings for the Mets, something he's done every year dating back to 2018. And he managed a 3.21 ERA, which is not that bad at all. Last little note before we start to get into negatives in the next segment. Since 2018, Adam Ottavino leads all relief pitchers in Major League Baseball in innings pitched with 351 2/3. For a Mets bullpen that is relying primarily right now on a bunch of minor league signings, having that type of a dependable big league reliever in your bullpen at $4.5 million is priceless. Since 2018, he has a 2.89 ERA, which is right in line with Edwin Diaz at 2.88, slightly better. That's 11th best among relievers who have thrown at least 200 innings since 2018. So the Mets get a very accomplished reliever who they can count on to give them innings. The question is, can he actually assume that 8th inning role again? And that's where I have my concerns, and I'll get to them in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. If you were in Las Vegas and had an extra $100 in your pocket, what would you do? I know personally I'd probably put $100 on red at the roulette table, see if I can double it. But, you can go out to dinner, buy some drinks, whatever it is. Gametime's trying to give you that extra $100. If you want to go to the big game, they're offering all users $100 off when they buy a ticket to the big game with the code Vegas100. I know personally I always go to Gametime for all of the sports, music, comedy, and theater events that are around me. It's great because I can pull up the app, look at anything going on. So if I just want to do something over the weekend, I can say, oh, there's a comedy show at a good price, or oh, there's a concert, or oh, I can go to that NBA game. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase because you can see the view of your seat before you arrive, so you know what to expect. You can buy tickets quick in a matter of seconds, and you can also go there for the last-minute tickets. It's the place to go for last-minute tickets. Buy them up to the minute of the game, even an hour after, and they're going to give you their best price guaranteed. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime, and right now, all Gametime users get $100 off a big game ticket with the code Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use the code Vegas100 for $100 off a big game ticket, or if you're not going to the game, just use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so now let's talk about the downside to Adam Ottavino re-signing with the Mets. At the dollar amount, don't worry about that. It's a good deal. I am happy with this signing, but there's a reason why I wasn't spending this offseason calling for the return of Adam Ottavino the same way that I did with David Robertson, because I believe that David Robertson is a better pitcher than Adam Ottavino. When we factor in price point, that's where the conversation changes, and that's what we'll get into in the final segment when I compare Adam Ottavino's deal to Hector Neris and David Robertson. But let's just look at the numbers from last year and what concerns me. I saw a lot of listeners and a lot of people, on social media reacting to the fact that guys steal a lot of bases on Adam Ottavino. And some were pinpointing last year's change to the base stealing rules as the reason why he struggled. To me, it's not a concern at all. The fact that he gives up base stealers, yes, that's concerning, but he always did that. Last year, it was 22 of 23 base stealers made it. 2022, 19 of 22 made it. It's not a drastic difference. It's really not. And he was also in 2022 working with James McCann and Tomas Nido, and 2023 was Francisco Alvarez, a rookie catcher, which could have explained, the couple of extra guys that got through as much as the base stealing rules. Okay, so let's put that part of the conversation aside. What concerns me about Adam Ottavino, for one, was a spike in walk rate. He walked only 2.2 batters per nine in 2022. That jumped up to 4.2 last year. But for his career, his walks per nine is at 4. So he's been successful in the past walking that many batters. The strikeout rate, that's a little more concerning because he dipped below 10 strikeouts per nine for the first time since 2014. That's concerning. And you look at the strikeout percentage, it went from 30.6% of batters that he faced that he struck out in 2022 down to 23.8%. And the velocity dipped as well from an average of 94.4 miles per hour to 92.6. He's getting older. He's 38 years old now. So those numbers do jump out. With that said, the expected batting average against Adam Ottavino last year was 211. Now, expected batting average is taking batted ball data and telling you a batter should hit against him. So that's pretty solid. His expected ERA was 3.53. He did a little better than that, so he was a little bit fortunate last year when it came to his ERA result. With that said, he was still in the 77th percentile for ERA, or expected ERA. Barrel percentage, 3.7%. That's in the 95th percentile. So among the best pitchers in the game at avoiding barrels. Well, that also coincides with a ground ball percentage of 56.2%. That's in the 92nd percentile. So he's still getting the ball on the ground. He's still avoiding barrels. He is getting hit hard, but when he does, it's generally on the ground. Like if you look at average exit velocity, hard hit percentage. So with all that said, because again, you can miss a barrel and the guy can hit the ball hard into the ground, right? There are a couple of things I look at with his pitch arsenal that sort of point to where he was struggling. And, you can look at, pitch usage and it doesn't always tell the story, but I think with Adam Ottavino, it does. So 2022, he threw his sweeper around 43% of the time, his sinker around 33% of the time. So those two pitches combined, were about 75% of his usage altogether. So that's really what he was throwing. He had a four-seam fastball that accounted for 12.2% of that usage. Everything else was under 10%. Cutter, changeup, a couple other pitches. His cutter went from 5.2% usage in 2022 all the way up to 15% usage in 2023. That cutter got wrecked. 3 of the 7 home runs he gave up were on the cutter. Batters hit .318 against it with a .727 slugging percentage. Why was he throwing it so much, you ask? Well, he got whiffs on it, 36.1% of the time. Sweeper, he only got whiffs at 23.5% of the time, which is down from getting whiffs at 38.4% of the time in 2022. So what happened there? My guess is he probably lost command of that sweeper, was missing outside of the zone, so he wasn't getting the same swing and miss. Guys were able to identify it, and when he was getting in the zone, it wasn't with the same amount of break, and guys were able to put some bat on it. Trying to get another pitch that could get swing and miss, he could throw for strikes, he went to a cutter, which is not as good of a pitch. That's why he only threw it 5% of the time the year before, and some guys teed off on it. He was also bad in leverage last year, which is another thing that you don't like for a guy that you're signed to be a high leverage reliever. In high leverage situations, batters hit .288 against him, got on base at a .406 clip, and slugged at a .519 clip, and lefties are always going to hit really well against Adam Ottavino, as they have in both of the last 2 years. So why is this still a good signing? We'll get to the comparison in the next segment, and I think that's where this, again, looks better and better. But even despite all of those struggles, he managed to keep his ERA to 3.21. He had a couple of bad months. He wasn't great in September. I believe he was really bad in May, off the top of my head. I looked at the splits. They didn't really tell me something massive, so I didn't jot them down. But I do know for a fact he was great in July and August. So there were still months where he was able to be really effective. And for a bullpen, again, that has nothing but minor league signings for a lot of it, and you got Brooks Raley and Drew Smith and Jorge Lopez. Of those other guys, I mean, Brooks Raley you probably trust a little bit more right now, but Adam Ottavino has the longest and best track record. You slide him back into a bullpen that has Edwin Diaz, which takes pressure off everybody, and you just sort of go to that age-old, we never know with relievers, on-year, off-year thing. And there is reason for optimism that Adam Ottavino can once again sort of exceed projections and be a nice high-leverage leader for the Mets. And when you compare what he's getting paid to the other guys in this market that the Mets could have signed, and the fact that they can now maybe sign another reliever on top of this to give them sort of 2 cracks at a guy that can pitch well in leverage, I begin to like this signing more and more despite all of that negative stuff I just got to. So I'll talk about that comparison to Hector Neris and David Robertson in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Today is Sunday, which means one of the last big NFL days on the calendar this season. It's getting close to wrapping up, but there's still a little bit of time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways that you can bet, like same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays. There's always NBA action every night, and so you can find those popular parlays of a couple of different teams that are playing that night. You can take the money line of multiple teams to create a parlay. You can maybe take the star player on a team with the money line and bet on the players over for points, rebounds, assists, 3-pointers made. There's a lot of ways that you can bet. And remember, again, you place that $5 bet, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. If you want to play today, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Now, before we talk a little bit more about Adam Ottavino, if you're watching on YouTube, I want to see if you remember that leg kick. If you're listening, well, we'll paint a picture for you. A big old leg kick from a burly first baseman who looked awful in the outfield and started at first for the 2015 New York Mets, where he made a throwing error. Lucas Duda. I got a bunch of signed photos in my closet. I was looking through them. Duda's our next giveaway. If you want to enter for a chance to win the signed photo, all you got to do is become a Locked On Mets insider. Our texting service is where we're going to run our giveaways moving forward. I'll be sending out a picture of that Duda autograph on Friday. All you have to do is reply to the text, and you can get a chance, or you will have a chance, to win the photo. You can find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/lockedonmets. Now, let's go over Adam Ottavino's contract and compare it to two of the recent high-leverage relievers that got signed. You got Hector Neris, which is, I think, the main one I want to focus on because the Mets showed interest here. 1 year, $9 million deal with the Chicago Cubs. Now, this contract also includes a $9 million club option, which turns into a player option if Hector Neris throws 60 innings this season. Hector Neris has exceeded 60 innings pitched in every season since 2019. So, good chance that's a player option. There's also incentives in each year of the deal for $2.5 million that could take this thing up to a 2-year, $23.25 million deal. The New York Mets are paying Adam Ottavino $4.5 million. No player options, no club options, no incentives, none of that. Straight 1 year, $4.5 million. That's a steal compared to Neris' contract. And I get it. Neris is a better pitcher, right? That's what everyone's going to say. Look, last year, Hector Neris had a 1.71 ERA. We watched him pitch in Philly for all those years. Hector Neris is not that good. His ERA in the 2 years prior was 3.63 and 3.72. It's a good pitcher. I don't think he's elite. His expected ERA last year was 3.35. Adam Ottavino's was 3.55. His expected fielding independent pitching, which is another one of these fancy stats that tells us how good a pitcher is, right? It was 4.45. Ottavino's was a little bit better at 4.33. Strikeout rate, a little better. Strikeouts per 9 was 10.14 compared to Ottavino's at 9.05. Walks slightly better, 4.08 to 4.23, but not a drastic difference in anything but the results that he got with that low ERA, which again is flashy, but I don't think the New York Mets are drastically better with Hector Neris in the bullpen compared to Adam Ottavino. I really don't. And certainly not double the dollar amount for this season with a club which will probably be a player option for the following season. So then he's stuck on your books for another year. Hector Neris goes out this year, pitches to a 3.85 ERA, and ends up with 61 innings pitched. He's stuck on your books again. And there's incentives. All right. Look at the projection models comparing these two guys. Neris' projections range from 3.72 for his ERA to 4.09. Ottavino's range from 3.98 to 4.42. Yes, Hector Neris is a better pitcher right now than Adam Ottavino. Is he twice as good? No chance. No chance. Now, I was constantly banging the table throughout this offseason for David Robertson to return to the Mets because I wanted to see him set up Edwin Diaz, which is what we got robbed of last year. And I do believe David Robertson is a better pitcher than really both of these guys, honestly. He gets a contract with the Rangers, 1 year, $11.5 million guaranteed. But the split of that is interesting. It's a $5 million base for this upcoming season, $5 million deferred. So $1.5 million buyout on a $7 million club option. And that's how you get to the $11.5 million. But even looking at that alone, you also have to remember that these guys have to choose to sign with you, right? It's not just, hey, you put the highest offer and they definitely take it. Now, yeah, the Mets could have outbid the Rangers, but David Robertson has been traded the last 2 years, probably doesn't want that to happen again. He thought he was signing with the team last year where he wouldn't get traded with the Mets, and it cratered. And he's signing with the defending champions at a point in his career where he would love to go out and win a World Series this upcoming season. So that wasn't on the table for the Mets. Hector Neris, maybe it was. Maybe at that dollar amount, the Mets met that contract or matched that contract or slightly exceeded it. They could have got him. But I don't see the value difference there that makes that worth it. Now, there's other relievers who have been signed this offseason that I would have liked. Jordan Hicks, Ronaldo Lopez. Both of those guys are getting chances as starters. Yariel Rodriguez, same thing. I would have loved that contract even as a starting pitcher. But again, they're not just straight relievers. They were never going to sign Josh Hader. So as much as this market has been frustrating for fans to sit back and just sit on our hands and wait and see what happens and hope that the Mets make some moves and there just hasn't been a ton to talk about, I still think they're making really smart baseball decisions. The old Mets front office, when Adam Ottavino walks in, if Billy Epler is up there making decisions and he says, I want to come back on this player option, but let's remove the deferrals. Billy Epler might just say yes. Steve's got the money, sure. And now Adam Ottavino is making $6.75 million instead of $4.5 million. Yes, as fans, why should we care that Steve Cohen gets to save a little bit of money? But it still just shows a well-thought-out front office that's making smart moves. And if their calculus on this signing was we can sign Hector Neris for $9 million, or we can sign Adam Ottavino for $4.5 million, I think they made the right call. Especially knowing that, okay, that other $4.5 million chunk, we can offer that to Ryan Stanek or Wandy Peralta. And we can get another reliever in here that has experience. If the Mets get Stanek, which I think would be my preferred target, because I think he'd have the best chance of being an eighth inning guy. I don't know about Peralta, although Peralta would give you a second lefty, which is good. But if you got Stanek, you go into this year with Edwin Diaz, Adam Ottavino, Ryan Stanek, and Brooks Raley. That's not a better bullpen than what you thought you were putting on paper last year when you thought you'd have Diaz, Robertson, and Ottavino, but it's a much better bullpen than what you ultimately had when Diaz got hurt. Edwin Diaz is the biggest thing that's going to, lift this bullpen up this year, but Adam Ottavino was a safe signing in the fact that he's going to give you innings. He's a veteran presence. He can pitch in your uniform. Checks a lot of boxes. And it allows you to get somebody else. And the hope is one of the two guys that you signed will have a good year and be able to pitch and leverage. And you also have a lot of lottery tickets that you're trying to cash in. You're hoping Drew Smith pitches better on a contract year. And Brooks Raley, too, to a certain extent as well. So I think the Mets bullpen is getting a lot better. I think this is a team that is being built to be able to handle a lot of those things that are going to pop up throughout a season. With a lot of depth. You're going to have more depth now making two signings instead of just signing Neris. Now, if the Mets don't make another signing, I get being a little bit disappointed, but the more I look at the numbers and really think about it and think about this contract that Neris got and compare it to Adam Ottavino's, it's a much better deal. And so the hope is Adam Ottavino goes back to the sweeper more. He has similar success, or at least something in the middle the last 2 years, strikes out some more batters. And ends up being a nice 7th or 8th inning guy for the Mets. But the downside compared to the downside of some of the other deals that have been signed this offseason, nowhere near as bad. And the Mets in a year where a lot has to go right, protecting yourself from risking 2025 is the prudent thing to do. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I'll be back with all 5 shows this week, starting on Monday here. So if you're listening on the audio side, I appreciate if you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, we're still trying to get to 8,000 subs by opening day. So I appreciate all of you who are hitting that subscribe button. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider to get a chance to get this latest giveaway for the Lucas Duda signed photo, you can find that link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Want to follow me on Twitter or X, you can do so at Finkelstein Ryan. And now that you made it to the end of the show, head over to Locked On Sports Today, which is the first ever 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, covering everything in the world of sports with our local experts from each team and our league-wide experts from each league. You find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.